Picture two people walking into the same car dealership on the same day, buying the exact same car, same color, same trim, same sticker price, $42,000. One of them pays cash, pulls it straight out of savings, drives off feeling like a genius. No debt, no interest, no bank involved, clean. The other one finances it, 5 years of monthly payments, interest the whole way. 10 years later, we check back in. The cash buyer has a car worth maybe $9,000. That's it. The finance buyer also has a car worth $9,000, but the finance buyer is richer, measurably richer, sometimes by tens of thousands of dollars. Same car, same decade, same starting price. One of them just made a very expensive mistake and didn't even know it. Here's the thing about paying cash for a car. It feels responsible. It feels like the smart money move. No debt, no interest, no bank breathing down your neck. And for most of financial history, that instinct made sense. But something changed. Cars got expensive, really expensive. The average new car in the US now costs around $48,000. That's not a typo. That's the average, not the luxury one, the average one. At the same time, something else happened quietly in the background. The stock market kept doing what it's done for the last 100 years, grinding upward, slowly, boringly, relentlessly. And that combination, expensive cars plus a market that compounds, created a trap that looks like discipline, but is actually a quiet, decades-long leak in your net worth. Most people walk straight into it, smiling, proud of themselves, holding the keys. Let's slow down and look at what actually happens to your money in both scenarios. No jargon, just numbers doing what numbers do. Say you've got $42,000 sitting in your account and you need a car. Path 1, you pay cash. $42,000 leaves your account. It goes into a machine. The moment you drive that machine off the lot, it starts losing value. New cars lose 20% of their value. By year 5, it's worth maybe half of what you paid. By year 10, it's a scrap adjacent. That money didn't disappear. It transformed. It transformed into something that depreciates by design. Path 2, you finance the same car. Let's say 5 years. At a typical rate, call it 6%. Your monthly payment lands around $812. Over 5 years, you'll pay roughly $7,000 in interest on top of the car's price. That number feels bad. It's supposed to feel bad. That's the part everyone fixates on. But here's what almost nobody calculates. What happens to the $42,000 you didn't hand over? That money stays invested, sitting in something like an index fund, averaging, historically, somewhere around 7 to 10% a year, depending on the period you measure.
Over 10 years, $42,000 growing at even a conservative 7% doesn't just sit there. It roughly doubles. It becomes somewhere close to $83,000. So now compare the two outcomes, honestly. Cash buyer, spent $42,000, owns a car worth $9,000. Net result on that decision? Down $33,000. Financed buyer, paid $7,000 in interest, but kept $42,000 invested, which grew into $83,000. Owns the same $9,000 car. Net result? Up roughly $34,000, even after paying all that interest. The responsible choice lost. The debt choice won, by a margin of almost $70,000. That's not a rounding error. That's a house down payment. Here's the mechanism nobody explains to you at the dealership, because the dealership has zero incentive to explain it. It's called opportunity cost, and it's the most dangerous force in personal finance, precisely because it's invisible. It never shows up on a receipt. It never shows up on a bank statement. There's no line item that says, "This is what you gave up." It just quietly doesn't happen. And humans are terrible at noticing things that don't happen. You can feel a monthly car payment. It hurts a little, every single month, like a small paper cut. That pain is visible. It's loud. It's the thing everyone warns you about. But you cannot feel $42,000 failing to compound for 10 years. There's no sensation for that. No alert, no notification. It's a wound with no nerve endings. And that's exactly why this trap works on smart people. Doctors fall into it. Engineers fall into it. People who are excellent at their jobs, excellent with logic, walk into a dealership and make a decision based on which pain they can feel, instead of which number is actually bigger. There's a name economists use for this: loss aversion. We feel the sting of a visible cost about twice as intensely as we feel the absence of an invisible gain. Paying interest feels like losing money. Missing out on investment growth doesn't feel like anything at all. So we optimize for the feeling, not the math. The car industry, by the way, knows this completely. It's part of why 0% financing promotions exist. They're not being generous. They're betting that you'll either take the cheap financing and keep your cash invested, which is fine for you, or you'll feel so good about no interest that you upgrade to a trim level you didn't need, which is fine for them. Either way, the dealership wins. The only question is whether you also win, or just feel like you did.
Now, here's where this gets interesting, because the cash is king argument isn't stupid. It's just incomplete. Let's give it a fair hearing before we take it apart. The hype version says, debt is bad, interest is theft, and the only truly wealthy move is to own things outright. No payments, no risk, total control. There's a real version of that argument too, and it's worth respecting. If you have no savings, no emergency fund, and a habit of overspending, financing a car can absolutely wreck you. Debt is a tool, and tools in untrained hands cause damage. If borrowing the money would tempt you to buy a more expensive car than you need, or if you'd panic and miss payments, then yes, cash is safer for you specifically. The math we just walked through assumes discipline. It assumes you actually invest the difference instead of spending it on something else. That assumption fails for a lot of people, and that's a real, fair limitation of the argument. But for someone who already has stable income, an emergency fund, and the discipline to actually invest rather than spend the leftover cash, the debt is always bad framing isn't caution anymore. It's a slogan. It's something that sounded true in 1985, got repeated for 40 years, and never got updated for a world where car prices tripled and index funds became available to literally anyone with a phone. The reality is this: money has a cost whether you borrow it or not. If you borrow it, the cost is visible. It's called interest. If you pay cash, the cost is invisible. It's called opportunity cost. Pretending the second one doesn't exist because you can't see it doesn't make it free. It just makes it sneaky. Let's zoom out, because this isn't really about cars. Cars are just the easiest place to see it, because the numbers are big enough to notice and short-term enough to measure. The same trap shows up everywhere money gets parked into something that loses value instead of something that builds value. It shows up when people pay off a low-interest mortgage early instead of investing the extra cash, not realizing they're trading a 4% guaranteed cost for a 7% missed gain. It shows up when people avoid all debt entirely, student loans, business loans, even reasonable ones, because debt was framed to them, growing up, as a moral failure instead of a financial tool. Somewhere along the way, I don't owe anyone anything got mistaken for, I'm making the most money possible. Those are two completely different goals, and only one of them builds wealth. And here's the part that should genuinely bother you. This isn't an accident of bad luck or bad timing. It's a behavior pattern that gets passed down. Parents who paid cash for everything raise kids who pay cash for everything, and nobody in that chain ever runs the actual numbers, because the numbers were never the point. The feeling of being debt-free was the point, and feelings don't compound. Money does. There's something almost funny, in a bleak way, about how perfectly this trap is disguised. The smart choice and the comfortable choice usually point in the same direction. This might be one of the rare moments in personal finance where they split apart completely, and almost everyone follows comfort straight off the edge, congratulating themselves the entire way down. The real risk isn't debt. The real risk is mistaking a feeling for a strategy. So here's where this leaves us. Paying cash for a car isn't reckless. It's not stupid. It's just optimized for a feeling, the feeling of owing nothing, rather than optimized for a number. And feelings are expensive when they're wearing a financial costume. The $42,000 never goes away.
It just decides where to live for the next 10 years. Sitting still inside a depreciating machine, or moving, quietly, inside something that grows. Most people will never run this calculation. They'll keep buying the next car the same way they bought the last one, proud, debt-free, and unknowingly poorer for it. So the real question isn't whether you can afford to pay cash for your next car. It's whether you can afford not to ask what that cash could have become.